Do-it-yourself artists, or what's called DIY, is becoming very popular right now. But is it a good thing? I mean, these are musicians, instead of playing big concert events or big venues where maybe they struggle making money or bringing the crowd in, they're switching to smaller venues, smaller halls, outdoor events, things like that. But again, is this a good trend, a good thing, or not? There's a video that I came across that I want to play and react to, and I want you folks to comment on it and we can discuss it. And then stick around to the end because I'm going to give you an insight that could be a possible game changer to these type of artists that are doing this. So again, DIY, do it yourself artists and what they're looking to do. It's not a bad thing to get out there and perform. It's always good to have new people that are into your music and do what you love to do. But is there any sight down the road to get to that next level? Rock music, I'll pick on that because that's been struggling now for decades. Now, people will say, and this is a conspiracy theory, that it's all about the music industry. They'd rather not have rock music because it's either, I've heard things about being too popularized, too positive, harder control. They'd rather have this other music or other styles of music. I don't know. But the bottom line, what we can agree on is that it has been struggling. And you're seeing a lot of rock bands, whether it be new or old, go to this do-it-yourself type of situation. Let's listen to this next video, or this first video, I should say, and let's see what they have to say, and let's talk about it. I'll react to it and give you my thoughts.
A lot of bands that have like a crap ton of followers on the socials, but it doesn't translate to tickets. It doesn't translate to fans, and it's because they're not able to play out because they have to. I mean, this is the landscape now. You have to buy onto a tour, and you have to pay to play. You have to, you want to play at the Whiskey in Los Angeles. You have to sell 100 paper tickets yourself, and if you don't, you pay the difference to go on that stage. But we're talking about a platform we've made called Playhouse, which basically, as we did this DIY tour, we learned how to basically create a blueprint for how to book house shows, third spaces, like the VFWs that you used to play, the yoga studio that doesn't know that it can throw shows at 9 p.m. and double their income for the day. I think we're in this tide-turning moment in the economy and in the music industry where the soapboxes are getting ready to be the stages. And I think, I don't want to go to an arena. I don't want to go to a stadium show. I don't want to pay $400 and then pay another $100 to park and then pay $300 to stay. I want to go to the places where I found my favorite music.
He brings up a lot of good points, and I'll get to that when I talk about some of the game changers. But one of the things I'll definitely point out right away is that it's not bad necessarily that you have to sell tickets, for an event. Now, there's a little bit of risk there, but there's give and take, and I'll get into that in a little bit. Let's cover the first topic. Artists selling tickets, the two-way street. I think so. So let me talk to you about this. Back in the 20th century, like in the 80s and 90s, it was very popular for small clubs and relatively bigger clubs that wouldn't give you a time of day if you were a new group. Okay, you can give them the tape and CD that you made. And back in those days, you didn't have these MP3s. So you can give them all this in, all your music and it sounds cool and all that. But they'll still be like, hey, you got to play a Wednesday or a Thursday if you're lucky. You got to play one of the night during the week. See if you can bring in some people. And then if you do okay, maybe we'll put you on for like a Thursday or a Friday, Saturday, what have you. So that was kind of like the norm back then. And it wasn't a guarantee. And for them, it was kind of like, meaning the owners of the club, it was kind of a win-win because if you didn't bring anybody in, it's probably like every other night on let's say a Wednesday night. And if you were able to bring people in, then it was like, cool, the club makes out well. And then you're that much closer to, getting into the club on a Friday night, Saturday night, and get exposure to other people. Now, what I just showed you there was, hey, here are some tickets you have to sell. Usually it's 25. I mean, it depends on what level you are. Sometimes it's 25, sometimes it's 50, sometimes it's more. But let's say you're starting band, you have to sell, hey guys, sell 25 tickets. if you're starting a musician, my opinion, you should be able to sell 25 tickets. I don't think that's completely outrageous. If you have a little bit of a following, you should be able to sell those. And if you have to eat it, maybe it's a cost of getting exposure depending on the gig. But I think that's fine. I think it's a good two-way street. I think it's good because the artist needs to bring in some people, right? They got to bring something to the table. And then the venue also has to bring something to the table. If the venue's bringing nobody either, it's kind of like, well, what the heck? It's got to be a two-way street. I don't think it's that crazy about these ticket things, but let me know what you think. That's the most important. So money making or just surviving? So basically, what I'm saying here is this really good for making money? I've seen people go on tours and, I've talked to a lot of bands over the recent years, like more regional, some national, local scene, mostly in the rock, metal type arena. And it's very hard for them. They go on tour, they have good days, they have bad days. They mostly make their money on the merchandise, and sometimes they have really good days, but it's very difficult. But some do. Some make out very well. I think it's a mixed bag. I think that going and trying to do your own tour. There's a couple bands, and I've interviewed a couple of them like a few years back in my podcast, where they do their own tour, and it's amazing. They do such a good job. They schedule like 16 shows during the summer. They just travel, and they make out very well. So I think some are just surviving, but what's the alternative? A lot of places are not going to give you the time of day depending on your genre of music. And again, I'm focusing a little bit on rock because that's one that's kind of hurting, but you could be hip hop, you can be a rapper and having your DJ backing tracks, same difference. It's kind of hard, So this is like it all depends. This topic, but some are doing pretty well. So and music industry, is that to blame? I would say I would say in a lot of ways, yes. The music is very electronic. I'm not, but again, I'm putting not just bands in there. I can just put even artists in there. It's very tough if nobody really knows who you are. Even if you're a pop artist with backing tracks or dancers, I mean, nobody really knows you. The industry is pretty darn controlled, you know? So it's very hard to break in there and to get the shows that you need. You really need to have a connection. A lot of people tell me you got to put in your time. You got to go on tours. You got to build these connections. That's huge. I'm not going to really get into that because I've had limited, there's only a certain level of experience. So there's a lot more people that have a lot are closer to it than I am, especially in these recent years. So I'm not going to get into all that right now, but is it to blame to a certain degree? Of course. I mean, let's face it. There's certain types of music and certain artists that they're just not playing and they could. I mean, let's face it. If anybody knows even the hip hop industry, you know that there's a lot of local artists that are just amazing, right? That can blow anything out of the top 100, but yet, and they're trying, but yet they don't get anywhere. And I don't want to go in there. I don't want to preach, but you get what I'm trying to feel. Okay, so before I get into what I think is going to be the game changer, let me just tell you that even though I'm starting to do these podcast shows, I also have 7 AI artists because it's hard for me as I get older to grab everybody I need. I have different genres of music, country, hip hop. This is a way for me to take my music ideas and leverage AI and work with them without the drama and without artists and all that type of drama that goes on, and produce some music and get the videos. And the videos, as time goes on, they'll get better. But I'm leveraging the skills I like to do to get the music out there in a positive way. This is positive music, and I'm hoping you would check it out. But more importantly, please subscribe. I would love it for you to subscribe to catch up with the shows and everything music, and enjoy some of the music that I put out there. So that's my little commercial break. So again, this is my opinion on the game changer. I think that these artists that are doing it yourself now, I think that's always a good thing. You can keep doing it. That's never going to be a bad thing. But I think some of the genres right now that are kind of forced to doing this, I think things will change. Because let's face it, people don't want to pay $400 for a ticket, $1,000 for a ticket. People just don't have that money to throw around. You know who has it? The older people that are like close to retirement age have saved some money. Maybe they want to see a band they were able to see before. But the local high school, college kid, they'd rather just go down to the local bar. If they can find like a cool band that's playing, that's going to be it. And not only that, but what I can tell you, going through listening to music in the 70s, 80s, 90s, et cetera, not to say how old I am, but you could see that everything's in cycles. Like you get into maybe a decade of music where it's guitars and drums and bass and all those basic instruments. Then it gets very electronic and very techno or very whatever you want to call it. And then it gets back to the, grunge, the guitar sounds. And then it goes back. It's been very electronic now for quite a while. And I think between the control of the sources that be in the music industry forcing this type of style of music in your ears constantly, and the cost of tickets and the cost of seeing these artists, where you can go down to the local place and see your local artist, whether it be hip hop, rock, whatever, your local artist, where they're performing live in front of you for like a fraction of the cost. I think that that's eventually going to take on. And then again, what's going to happen is that the music industry is going to notice this stuff and then kind of switch gears. It could take a while, but you watch and see that. And that's the culture part that I mentioned here. You're going to see a culture swing. I'll give you a quick example. I know I'm kind of talking on here, but in the 80s, 70s, 80s, you had disco transitioning to not freestyle music. I forgot the name of it, but there's a name for it. I apologize. But in the 80s, there was a specific, you had hair rock music, the hair bands, but you also had like this 80s synthesizer type sound, right? But then what happened, like in the early 90s, the MC Hammer started to fall off in terms of like hip hop. I'll pick on that. And then you had, Tupac and Biggie and all this other stuff. For rock, you started having Pearl Jam and Nirvana and all, things, the culture changed, the music changed a little way from the poppy, synthy stuff into more of a different styles in the music industry. Now, we've been kind of like seeing similar music for the last decade or so, and I'll probably be another show. I'll talk about that. But I think you're going to see a game changer. I think between those things I mentioned, I think you're going to see eventually the cycle back again to more musicians playing out and maybe rock coming back to a certain degree. But anyhow, thank you again for hanging in there. Again, these are all my opinions and what I've seen over the years and different things. But I want to know your opinion because we all have different perspectives, and music is a very personal thing and a different individual thing to each person. So I want to know what your thoughts are. Thank you so much. And please subscribe and God bless. And I will see you in the next one. I elevate.